Greetings, adventurous travelers and fellow keepers of the lake. How are you all doing? I've been asked by one of the viewers to talk about how you would make, as a DM, your players roleplay amongst themselves, or even like roleplay in general. And I really think the question itself is flawed in a way, but the topic is still worth exploring. So let's try to do a short video this time, but still let's try to start a cool discussion in the comments and maybe do a follow-up video if we gather enough material. So why I say the question is flawed? Well, how much you and your group roleplay, it's a matter of, well, a personal style and experience. For example, my first ever game that I was a player in, I didn't know the DM, and the whole experience of him doing the voices and everything was very uncomfortable for me, very cringe. I could see the appeal, but yeah, it wasn't for me at that point. Some years later, I was playing with my friend who really got me into the hobby, and his style of play was more like just narrating from the third person most of the time, while interactions would be done in first person, but in more or less the same voice, minimal fluctuations in tone. I mean, don't get me wrong, the traits of the NPCs were discernible, but the voice and the tonality stayed almost the same. They felt like comfortable for me in that environment. They felt natural, like talking to him. And that's what I needed to feel safe at the moment. So yeah, feeling safe is the most important step towards role-playing. Talk to your players. For me at the time, safe meant I won't be forced to perform. For others, it's a different thing. You as the DM set the tone of how silly, how serious, how wacky you want your table to be. And if you're larger than life, most of the players will follow. And I really think over time I developed my own style of DMing. And even though I really liked how my DM did his roleplay with minimal voice acting, I still developed a style that is somewhat opposite to that. I now actually do some accents, I do some voices. They're horrible and they're far from being over the top, but I think I found my sweet spot. So then, when I said role-playing is a matter of experience, that's exactly what I meant. There is this one thing I found to be very common when people are just starting out with this hobby. And by the way, I thought I was actually immune to this, but ended up doing the same thing. I'll show you what I mean. So actually, most don't fully understand how you can role-play someone else, and you end up being just an enhanced or an edgy version of yourself. And you might end up playing this one exact character until you get bored of it. I mean, I know people that never got bored of it, and regardless of the setting, the game, whatever, they're always playing the same character. And it's fine. Why wouldn't it be? And then you get bored of it, and you start to think like, should I play a gnome? Maybe I should play a goblin. Should I be a merman? If you're a younger person, maybe you say, I want to play someone that's very old. Or maybe you want to play some other genders. You want to put yourself in shoes of other people, to try and feel how those people would feel, to put yourself in their shoes. It adds another layer to the game, and I think people that have been playing for a longer time find this more appealing, especially because they are used to the whole thing. Some people just don't roleplay because they are shy. And that is completely fine. Sometimes it's not even that, but they just don't know what to do, how to approach the situation, how to react. They should be involved in things, but I mean, you shouldn't force it upon them. Don't force them to roleplay. They'll just observe the room and learn. I've had this one very interesting situation. So there's this guy playing with us, let's call him Johnny. And we mostly played Call of Cthulhu, and he's a bit shy. He wasn't going into roleplay when a lot of things were happening around him. He liked the one-on-one special, like, social encounters more. And we had this experimental scenario. It's called The Curse of the Yellow Sign. It's the Act 1 called Digging for the Dead God. It's kind of like this social experiment where there is nothing paranormal happening, but the players get paranoid and they start to turn on each other and stuff happens and they get killed and all that. So I've printed out some pre-gens and given a short briefing to each player, and it was like this army squad that was doing some archaeological digging. I mean, naturally for Call of Cthulhu, right? So there's Johnny. He got a character that is one of the lowest ranking ones in the hierarchy of this squad. But his character had a very righteous and strong moral compass. So I told him, at any time, if you see other characters are doing something cruel, You can look at me and nod, and I will give you a sign that you can interfere. And at that point, you should try and stop the cruelty, stand up to your higher-ups. So the interesting thing is that one other player here, let's call him Melvin, was not only playing the cruelest character, but at one point in our real life, Melvin had a sort of a formal authority over Johnny and me. So even though I became friends with Melvin, Johnny hasn't seen him for quite some time, and the feeling of Melvin having authority over him was still there. So Johnny never actually did anything to stop the cruelty in game. He would look at me, I would give him a sign, and he would just not do it. So after everything is finished and after we revealed all the character secrets and everything, people asked him, why didn't you do it? And he said, well, it didn't just feel right, you know? And after discussing it a bit more, we figured out that yes, he was role-playing, but internally. He really wanted to listen to my GM instructions, but his learned reflex to respect Melvin's authority was triggered by the fact that Melvin's character was also having authority in game, and it was perceived as an actually bigger threat and the bigger authority than I could ever establish as a GM at the table. So he felt like he wasn't playing the game right. He wanted to follow the briefing and the instructions I gave and stand up to the cruel character, but he felt he doesn't have the courage to do so, which in my opinion is the exact thing that we are trying to do with these games. We are trying to invoke certain emotions, so in a sense, there was roleplay. He was immersed in the game, he was enjoying it, he was feeling it, he was living it in a sense. But we just weren't able to see it. He had the internal conflict of wanting to stand up to authority and just, you can't because like you don't want to suffer the consequences. Showing how you feel around the table, especially if you're not doing it in a conversation, that's maybe a topic for another time, but it's something that you learn, and it's like a form of like a meta communication thing. It's a meta communication layer around the table, I would say. Another thing that I noticed around the table is the difference in how people that have been playing strictly board games versus people playing much more video games, how they react differently when they are first introduced to tabletop RPGs. People that play a lot of narrative board games, or board games that require you to negotiate or bluff. For example, I don't know, board games similar to Twilight Imperium, Eclipse, maybe the old Doom game, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. Hidden role games like Avalon, Citadel, or Werewolves. I think I have Citadel here. Yeah, there's Citadels. Players I had that are obsessed with these types of games usually can embody a certain role much easier than other people, and much easier than those that are consuming video games. So why is that? Well, I think in video games you can rarely fine-tune your behavior. Usually you have some of the things that are predefined that you can say, like dialogue options, for example. So I thought about like simulating the feeling of having dialogue options and using that to somewhat break through the barrier that you have in your mind and like become more natural with role-playing in general. I came up with this exercise. You take a die, like a d4. For each number, you have some predefined answers. For example, 1 is like agreed, 2 is disagree, 3 is maybe, and I don't know, the 4th one is go crazy and jump out the window, whatever. So now when you're stuck in a conversation with an NPC and you don't know what to say, you just roll this die and you basically are randomly generating your character's personality on the spot. Now, you might say, well, this would make you just sound insane and there would be no consistency to your character whatsoever. And that is true. Phil sounds kind of fun. Maybe I will create a character that just answers to things on a die roll. Might be quite annoying from my other companions, probably, but sounds fun, right? But yeah, that's not the point. You're not trying to simulate a character. You're not trying to create a character. You're trying to feel what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. You're gauging your inner reaction to the die roll. It's the same thing like when you ask someone to tell you, does the yellow shirt or the brown shirt fit better with these jeans or something? And you already kind of know the answer, and then they say, like, take the yellow one. And you say, well, are you sure? I don't really like yellow. And then that person says, well, why are you even asking? Just take the one you wanted, right? But you actually didn't know you wanted to wear the brown shirt on a conscious level until you asked someone. I mean, my wife does this all the time. So do the same thing, but with this die. Roll it and feel if this answer feels right. in time, you won't even need it anymore. You will just know what feels right. You will do the die roll in your head automatically. You might also use a magic 8 ball for this, or even playing cards. Tarot cards? So I know people that are kind of player that will spend most of the game night just drawing in their little notebook and listening to what is happening around the table. Sometimes jumping into roleplay, but most of the time they're in their little notebook. And that's fine also. I am one of those people actually. I tend to play with my hands a lot while being a player. Sometimes I would have these like bursts of roleplay or tactics where I'm in the moment and I'm active, but it can't last for a long time. I would generally go back to my little thing. And it's strange because when I DM, I'm constantly in the roleplay mindset. I am in the action, I'm in the moment. But when I'm playing as a player, I tend to be a bit more passive. I don't know if that's tied to experience or flow of information, or while you're DMing, you have a constant torrent of information going through your head. As a player, you're just soaking in little by little. So it might be that. I don't honestly know. But that doesn't mean that I'm not listening or that I'm not fully engaged inside my mind. It's just that I need to do something with my hands. So sometimes people are like this. Sometimes people just get tired and their attention falls and they seem like they're not paying attention to what is happening. Well, usually I look out for these types of things, and usually when everyone is down like this, you know the end of session is near, so I would just have this last boom before I end it, like I would just play the Doom soundtrack and it just gets everyone going, like it gives everyone a second wind. But yeah, there's a difference in that. So sometimes people give advice on these things and sometimes it's not the best. I've been guilty of this. People give advice to hand out rewards for good roleplay. Well, if you have someone that is not really a role player, don't really do this. Don't give out rewards to other people for their roleplay without finding something that you should give a reward to this person for. Maybe they're very tactical and creative in combat. If they do something creative, write it down. At the end of the session, you read out who was good at what and you hand out the rewards. Now, no one is being left out. I mean, you still want the creative thinking, right? But roleplay isn't a requirement. It's nice to have as long as everyone is enjoying it. Overall, it's good that we ask these questions. How do we make people roleplay amongst themselves? But at the end of the day, it's not a question for me. It's a question for you and your players, their style, the amount of experience, preferences, etc. So sit down, crack your beverage of choice, cheer your friends, and talk about roleplay. After that, go around your game table, gather around, throw some dice, embark on your adventure, and with that, I bid you
farewell, keepers.